Hey, everybody, and welcome to Expert Influencer Academy, and welcome to another episode of the Expert Podcast. Today, guys, we have a very special guest with us, and his story is incredible, and I am really excited that he is able to come on the show and share his story with you guys. It's really one of inspiration, and it really blew my mind of what's possible, so I'm excited. So we have the CEO, Mr. Kevin Sanderson of Maximizing ECOMMERCE with us today, and he's going to be talking about how you can get started selling and actually building a profitable business on Amazon. Kevin, how you doing today? Thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. This is a lot of fun. That was quite the introduction there. I hope I can live up to it even remotely.
Man, thank you for taking some time. I know you're a busy guy, and I know that we've met in person, and we're members of a couple networking groups. But your story is pretty phenomenal. It really is one from where you were able to build a six-figure business over 4 years, just selling on Amazon. Right? Is that correct?
Yeah. Now, just to be clear, when you're selling things in the physical product space, margins are different than they are necessarily with, if you're selling services. But I actually, maybe just past my first full year, I was doing about the equivalent of 6 figures of sales in a year, and then over time grew it to a point that I could leave my job.
I mean, that's amazing, because one of the things that I hear as a business consultant and as trying to help small businesses grow their presence online and things is you always hear people gripe and kind of complain about, how Walmart is putting mom and pop shops out of business, or how Amazon is putting mom and pop shops out of business. But you actually leveraged, one of the biggest online retail platforms to work to your advantage. So how did you get into that? And I would love for you to share your story with our audience, for maybe that somebody is looking to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So what I would tell your audience to consider is what's hiding in plain sight is that actually more than half of the sales made on Amazon are made by third-party sellers. They're either like myself, that are, maybe they're just starting, or, maybe they're someone who, they've got a company with 100 people that working for it. So there's third-party sellers. And if you look right underneath what we call the buy box, which is the add to cart button, you'll see sold by, and oftentimes it might say and fulfilled by Amazon. So that just means they had inventory in Amazon's warehouse, and then Amazon shipped it to the customer when the customer bought it. And so Amazon has created this opportunity for people to basically to take a step back here. If you were, let's go back to the 80s and 90s when everyone's complaining about big box stores like Best Buy and Walmart and Circuit City and all these, big retailers coming to town taking over for the little guy. Well, if you had like a small store in your town and Walmart comes in and they're starting to take some of your market share, you couldn't just go on aisle 9 and say, you know what, I'm going to set up shop right here. Right. They would have kicked you out, and you'd probably go to jail potentially, and you'd be trespassed. But Amazon says, please do that, essentially. So Amazon wants to have the largest catalog possible of products. And so if you look at their logo, it's got it almost looks like a little smile, and it's also hiding in plain sight. And if someone hasn't noticed this, they'll notice it every time they get a box from Amazon, is that there's the little swoosh kind of smile, and it's really pointing from A to Z. So basically they want to have everything from A to Z. And so wow. That's it's a little Amazon trivia there.
That's pretty neat. This the hidden message within a logo, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like in FedEx. Like if someone hasn't noticed this, they'll notice this every time, that the E and the X makes an arrow.
Nice.
And so yeah,
I've heard that one. That one I've heard. Yeah, that's cool. How did you realize the potential? How did you get into this?
Yeah, great question. So I've always had a little bit of an entrepreneurial drive. I remember as a kid going around actually knocking on doors with a tray of Kool-Aid and Dixie cups and selling them for probably a quarter or something like that. I was probably losing my mom's money, but it was it was fun. And I think people just okay, kid, you're the neighbor's kid. Here, take a nickel or whatever and go away. So I made some sales there. But I've always kind of had a drive. And then I started climbing the corporate ladder. I worked for a couple of different Fortune 500 companies. And basically I was in a situation where my position was eliminated because the company I was working for got taken over by another company. And it wasn't like an overnight thing, but over time, there was pressure to cut costs, and my level in that company didn't exist. So myself and some others at that level were asked to walk the plank, so to speak. And I used that as an opportunity to try something a little bit different. And taking a step back from there, so this would have been, let's say, 2013 that I was asked to walk the plank. Well, a few years before then, I was, really pretty much my entire adult life, I always kind of thought, what was I going to do for this entrepreneurial drive? So, when I was a kid, walking around trying to sell, Kool-Aid or whatever, it doesn't quite work the same when you're an adult. People just be like, get off my yard. So I couldn't do that. But I was trying to think of what are things I could do. And one of the things I thought about was, and this must have been like 2004, 2005, I bought a couple of Nike 4-woods, which are golf clubs. And anyone that plays golf knows 4-woods is not a normal club for people to have. Usually they have the driver, the 3-woods, the 5-woods, the irons, not a 4-woods. But I was like, oh, it's Nike. It's great. And it was selling for like $40 on eBay. And I saw Nike.com, the manufacturer's suggested retail price, and I say suggested on purpose, was like $400. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to 10x my money.
Heck
That's
yeah.
what the value is. What I didn't realize, that's not actually what the market was paying for these clubs. Because then after I submitted my credit card and the clubs are on the way, I came to realize everybody else was buying them for $40. And so I did what a lot of people did. I did nothing. I was just like, So I sat them. One of them is actually still to this day in the packaging. So still got
like
the
a
cellophane
trophy
wrap. Oh yeah. It's a reminder for not, what happens when you don't take action. So it wasn't until about 2015 when I was working for a buddy of mine's insurance agency. Had a great experience there, learned a lot. They were going through a lot of growth, and I was working really hard. And it was one of those things I was like, you know what? I was very happy for them and the success they were having at their agency. But it was like, if I'm going to work this hard, I want to work on my own dreams too. So I started on the side figuring out like, oh, okay, I can actually take products, whether they're my products that I own the trademark to, or stuff I bought at Walgreens, and I can sell it on Amazon and people will buy it. And so it was 2015. So keep in mind, 10-year gap in my entrepreneurial journey here where I did nothing. So what happens when you do nothing? You get nothing.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
my results were zero, flat out zero, because I didn't take advantage of, the internet was, taking off. It's still taking off to this day. It's, it's not too crowded. It's a growing thing. But basically what happened was I went to Walgreens locally here where we live, and they had their summer items on clearance, and I bought some stuff because Amazon gives you this app where you can like actually scan and see what it's selling for in Amazon, how many people are selling it, and you could be one of the people selling these products. And so I sent stuff into their warehouse. Literally the first day it arrived, I got a sale, and they have the app, which you can use for scanning, also tells you what your sales are. So my sales have been 0, 0, 0, 0. And then now all of a sudden there's a 1. It's like, wait, this is not a 0. This is a 1. So all of a sudden this rush of adrenaline went through me. And I went running into the living room, because I think I was in the bedroom at the time. I went running to the living room to show my wife. I was like, you have to see this. And I practically threw the phone at her. I think I can still visualize to this day this look of fear in her eyes that I don't think she'd ever looked at me with before or since. I think she thought I was crazy, but she realized I was just really excited about something. But basically I was hooked. And I said, I got to figure this out. So that was the summer of 2015. So it was going into the fall, where I was a high school football official, and I took a season's worth of earnings and I went on Alibaba.com and I found products that I could basically private label on my own and I sent those into Amazon and started making sales for my own branded products, and then reinvested where I could, or pretty much reinvested for a few years, about 2.5 years before taking anything off the table and putting more money in actually where I could. And then about a year ago, I left my job to both sell full time, and then also I help people with selling as well.
Man, that is a great story. You hit on like so many different topics that like could all be separate videos. Like number one was, when you do nothing, you get nothing. And that is
Yep.
that's so true. I mean, that's number one is you got to do, number two is, you, you, you learned, like you failed, but as an entrepreneur, I mean, failure, and I always tell my audience, failure is part of the process. I think that, a lot of people hold themselves back from taking action and actually trying something because they're afraid of failure. But I think we need to realize it. And, your story and my story, it's not unique. That's the path of the entrepreneur, is that failure is part of the journey and it's part of the process. You just got to learn and move forward. And then the other thing is you reinvested, like, you took earnings and you invested it into your business. And like you said, you didn't take anything off the table for like the first couple of years. Everything you made, you just put back into your business to build, and build. And I think those are great entrepreneurial concepts that I think, it really hits at the fundamentals of creating any kind of business, whether it's an Amazon business, like what you have, or whether it's, a social media business like what we have. So, I mean, thank you for those tips. That was great. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Amazon. So how do you get started? Like if people are listening to this, and I mean, your story is pretty incredible. And I've been to a couple of your workshops, and I know you had a live seminar the other night, and me and my fiance, Tia, we jumped on, and I got to tell you, she got super excited. I told her about you, when we first met and stuff, but when she actually heard your story and saw you in action, I mean, like you fire people up. People get fired up when they hear the potential. What advice do you have? How do you get started? If somebody's listening to this wants to jump in, what do you do?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you. I'm glad that you and your fiance enjoyed the presentation. Now, what I would say to people is, let's take the tale of two Kevins here. So 2004, 2005, Kevin, I can't even tell you what year it was because my eBay account, which I still have, doesn't go back that far with the sales, or with my buying history, I should say. And then there's 2015 Kevin. So what's the difference between the two? One said, I'm going to dabble, and one said, I'm going to figure it out. And so I didn't know everything. I knew enough to at least start. And it's like, it's kind of like the analogy of swimming. You can talk about stroke techniques. You can watch interviews with Michael Phelps. You can, hear Mark Spitz, or whatever his name was, the kind of the Michael Phelps of the 60s or 70s. You can hear someone's, philosophical stories and all that. But until you are actually in the arena, in the pool, you will never know what water feels like. And so that's where the true learning is that you got to jump in the pool and you got to start with something. Now, the nice thing is, just like the tale of two Kevins, there's also the tale of two retailers. And so let's go back to the story of like the 80s and 90s with retailers. And I've had family members who have had retail shops. And to start that, you might have to sign a lease. And let's say it's 10-year lease, or even if they let you sign a 1-year lease, right, you're on the hook for every month, money coming out, regardless of what happens. You might be setting up and they still want your money. The utility man or woman wants your money for electricity and for internet and for water and sewage and all this. All these bills are starting to pile up. You might hire a cashier and a stock clerk, and you might have to get like $20,000-$30,000 worth of inventory that you're on the hook for just to test out your idea. Yeah. And so when we hear all these stories of like businesses failing, a lot of times that's what we're comparing it to. That, some of those work out and some of those don't, because it's so much they have to put in just up front to even test their idea. And you never know if the market is going to go for something until you try it. Now with Amazon, you could start with a product either that, you know, you're buying from the store, which sometimes in the Amazon world, it's called retail arbitrage. It's not, Amazon doesn't officially call it that, but sellers will refer to it as retail arbitrage, where you're buying something, maybe it's on clearance, but on Amazon it's going for a higher price because, you know, clearances tend to be kind of local to a store, and, you know, it might be for a limited time, whereas like the ongoing selling price of an item, you know, might be a lot higher on Amazon. So that's an opportunity to take advantage of buy low, sell high. So at least try something like retail arbitrage, or if somebody has a product, you know, get it up there, create a listing. There's a lot of free content out there where people describe, you know, how to sell a listing. You know, a lot of times people are trying to sell courses and things like that. And oftentimes you can just start with just the free information that's out there. So I recommend at least start. You know, there's podcasts out there, there's YouTube channels. I have a podcast and a YouTube channel called Maximizing E-commerce. It's not necessarily a beginner podcast. I don't necessarily talk about what's your first product, because that tends to be where people get stuck. There's lots of content around that.
Right. That question's coming. I was going to ask you that next, if you had, you know, any like recommendations, or, but I mean, I want you to finish your thought,
Sure.
but at the same time, I know wheels are turning. And so
Yeah.
what do you sell? You know, like what do you sell?
Well, it's the paradox of choice. So it's basically, you know, Amazon has, let's just say there's 20 categories. I don't know. There's probably more than that. Let's say there's 2 million products in each category. So that's a lot of products in their catalog. So it's like, which ones do I do? Well, there's a few little tips I can give for people. One, download the app. You can get a free seller account. There's a professional seller account and a individual seller account. The individual one's free. It's not really worth it unless you're selling at least 40 units a month to upgrade to the professional account, because they pay just how the math works out with some of the fees. But what I will say is you could start with an individual account and just start seeing. So like one of the things you could do is you could take the app on your phone. There's like a little camera icon, and you basically, it's like almost like you got your camera up, but within Amazon seller app. And then you could just take the UPC symbol of stuff in the store or in Target or Walmart, wherever you're at, just start scanning it and see what it says. And one of the things you're going to see in there is, I don't remember in the app if they call it BSR or bestseller rank, but BSR is a term people use for bestseller rank. And basically, like I was saying, there's all these different categories. So like, for example, home and kitchen might be a category, or automotive is a category. And so, you know, whatever the number one is selling the most units per day. And then like whatever million might be selling one a year, if even that. So you want to look and see like, okay, so if you're looking at products that someone else sells, you probably want to look for ones that maybe the bestseller rank, depending on the category, but let's just say 100,000. This is not a set number to go with, but just don't even give attention if it's like, you know, the bestseller rank is 900,000. It's not going to move enough for you to at least learn the process, because ultimately, if you're buying stuff, you probably want it to move like in the first month or two, at least, so you get the confidence that like, oh, okay, I bought something and it worked out. So, you know, if someone has a store, has their own product, look and see. You could just look up the keyword of how somebody might find your product. So if you're selling yoga mats is like this generic, almost a joke in the Amazon seller community, but we'll just use yoga mats as an example. So let's say you're selling yoga mats and you got your own brand of yoga mats, and maybe you're selling it online and you're selling it, you know, out of the trunk of your car. You have a yoga studio or a Pilates studio, and this is how you sell it. But you're like, but I want to reach more people. Well, Amazon would be a great way to do it. So you can look and see yoga mats, look on the first page and see, you know, pay attention to things like what are the bestseller ranks of some of those ones on the first page, and then what are the words people are using to describe those products.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Because Amazon's very keyword driven. So if you think about when you go to a store, everything in the store tends to be driven by categories, which Amazon kind of is, but people go to Amazon almost the same way that you might say to the stock clerk, or somebody at a store, where are tomatoes?
Right.
And they say, oh, they're over here, and they show you the tomatoes. They don't say well, sometimes they might say it's on the other side of the store, but Amazon, they can't say, oh yeah, look in our database out of the 40 million products or whatever they have and find it. Or, oh, it might be in amongst the other 10 million. They want to get like the most relevant for your search to you. So what they do is their algorithm looks at the title, there's bullet points, and there's a description, and there's even some keywords you can put in where people can't even see them. But basically, Amazon's trying to figure out your product and to match it up with the most relevant keywords people are using to search for a product.
So it
And
sounds
so
like
the more
it
relevant,
works.
it's very much like Google.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It sounds like it works just like a search engine, and Google and things. So make sure, I guess, that your products are true, right? Your descriptions are true. It's and
Right.
kind of I tell everybody when they're building their business in Google is put yourself in the mind of your customer. How would you search for your product or service online? Your customer uses the internet the same way you do. And that kind of blows
Right.
people's minds, that, wow, I never thought about that. And I'm like, no,
Right.
we're all human. Your
Right.
customer uses it the same way you do. So get in the mind. That's a great pointer. Let me ask you this. Do you recommend like starting out, you think people should stick, because I know it's endless. I realize that it's endless, and there's billions, literally billions of products all over the world. But because of the keywords and because of the descriptions and things like that, for someone that's just starting out, do you recommend that maybe they stick with a niche or products that they're already familiar with, like maybe a life coach or a fitness coach could do the yoga mats, things like that. You know what I mean? Or a pet enthusiast could look into pet products. How do you feel about that? Because I mean, I don't know anything about staplers, so I'm probably not going to go buy a truckload of staplers and try to sell them on Amazon. You know what I mean?
That's a great question. And I would say it depends. And a lot of things in business, it depends. And a lot of times it depends on what you want as the business owner. To start, I say go, unless you have your own product currently, go to Target, go to Walmart, go to Walgreens, go wherever, look in the clearance aisle, or just as you're shopping in your normal day-to-day life, just start looking at stuff and scanning it, just so you can kind of get a sense of, there's certain products that you have to get approval for. There's certain products that are going to be restricted for whatever reason. But like I was saying, you figure out what the water's like when you're actually in it. And that's one way to
Right.
at least dip your toe in it. But as far as, do you create like a brand, or do you just sell a bunch of stuff? People do either. And so there's a lot of debates around that. So if you're selling, let's say, wholesale, so let's say you're buying products for someone else. Now, the problem with what I was describing before with retail arbitrage, where you're buying something off the shelf, is that you're constantly having to find the next product. So
Right.
it's not scalable. It's great to start. But if you want to, let's say, sell products that, maybe they're owned by another brand, and you're selling that product and other people are selling it too, that's really a wholesale model. With that, I wouldn't worry so much about sticking with a niche. Now, if you want to create your own brand, I would probably at least try to stay close to the same niche, because over time you could, and I'm not necessarily the expert on this, but I know a lot of people that do this. Well, they'll create brands, create followings, and they'll have like these elaborate, Facebook Messenger funnels, so that
Right.
whenever they launch a new product, they send people to it. Because, if you're selling a yoga mat, but then, all of a sudden you're selling, a USB cable, and you're trying to send it to the same audience, it's not going to make sense.
Correct. Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
goal is to have a brand, and there's advantages to each. Wholesale can sometimes be simpler to get up and running, other than the fact that you have to get approved by suppliers. which is sometimes the more challenging part with that model. Whereas if you're creating your own brand, one day you could theoretically sell it, and those currently are getting about a 3 to 3.5 multiple. So what that means is if your business did $100,000 in profit, it's worth 3 to 350,000 ish. And
Okay.
the more you have outside of just selling stuff straight on Amazon, like if you have like your own website, maybe you sell on Amazon in other countries and things of that nature, you're going to be more attractive to buyers and potentially get a higher multiple. So
Nice.
those are all
Well,
things to, I know I just threw a lot out at people, but that's basically some things to consider. So what I would say more than anything is oftentimes, and this is my challenge to anyone that was like, their wheels are turning with everything I just said, just start. Just do something.
yeah.
Something, because you'll start to feel what it's like in the arena, and you'll start to feel like what works for you and what your goals might be. And if you realize a year later you're climbing up the wrong ladder, just move over to the different ladder. So don't get too hung up on like, oh my gosh, there's so much pressure, I got to do it exactly the right. No, just start.
I think that's great advice. Yeah. That's what I tell people. You never know until you know, the best time to start is now.
Right.
You know. Kevin, this is great information. Thank you. I know that you specialize in this. Like if one of our listeners was really intrigued and wanted to dig a little further, you actually help people become Amazon entrepreneurs, right?
Yes. So it depends on what someone's goal is. I don't publicly make myself like the how to get started guy, but I've had people, it's usually I do more like with referrals and things of that nature. Where someone wants to get started, I might create like a coaching package for them, but that's not something I even really advertise. I tend to work more with business owners who want to get started. So that typically they already have a product and they're like, okay, but how do I figure out Amazon? Because they just don't have the
Okay.
time. And then
Gotcha.
also I help existing Amazon sellers go into international channels on Amazon, like Canada or Europe. But if you had a listener that had a question, feel free, email me, kevin@maximizingecommerce.com. Be more than happy to answer any questions.
And that's your name across all social platforms, right? Facebook, Twitter. Max.
Twitter, I made it shorter. It's Max Ecom, MAXECOM.
All right, we'll have all the links to your stuff down below. But I mean, this is great, and I know you just. I know it's business owners and you're geared more B2B, but I deal with small businesses and like I said, this is a major complaint of theirs is that they feel like they can't compete with Amazon. For the business owners out there that are watching and listening to the podcast, I totally recommend that they reach out to you because I think that's where you excel, and I think you could really, really help them. So you're looking for people that maybe you work specifically with businesses that probably have a product already and they're looking to expand their business online, correct?
Yeah, because what I've found is, let's say you're a business owner and you've got all these priorities. And, sometimes it can feel like drowning of like trying to figure out like, okay, how do I keep the business? And we can all relate to this in business where it's like, you feel like you're just trying to keep your head above water. And so the thought of like going into yet another channel
Yeah.
might be daunting, especially if you feel like that other channel is what's taking from you and putting more water on you because you're trying to like keep your head above water with, whatever changes are happening. But the nice thing is, Amazon, like I was saying earlier, you can just walk into aisle 9, so to speak, and just start putting your products up. And they actually encourage it. In fact, they have, support resources for you on how you do that, and
Nice.
a very elaborate system of how you can do that. And there's communities out there of people who, spend all their day trying to figure out how to get the best juice out of the algorithm, so to speak.
Let me ask you this: for the business owner that just doesn't have time, like, wants to be on Amazon, but just because in my business, I run into, at first, when we first started, I wanted to train small businesses and business owners on how to, produce better content, grow communities around their brand and things like that. But I quickly realized that, they don't want to do it themselves. All they know is
Right.
they need to be online. They don't know how to do it. They don't want to know how to do it. They rather pay someone to do it for them. Do you do that?
Yes, I can do all that. So the thing of it is, myself and my team, we can handle the getting things set up, because at the end of the day, they know more about brick and mortar running of something, if
Right.
that's their type of business or whatever their business is. They understand their business and their customers and things of that nature, and I can help them with something else. Just like if I had a hot water heater that busted, I could try to figure it out. I could spend hours trying to figure it out and try to eke through maybe saving a few $100, but then I could just hire someone to do it, and I have hot water running right away.
Right. Right. I mean, yeah, you should always, I'm being from the IT field and working for hospice. I was a junior network administrator for hospice. You really learn really quick that getting things up and running smoothly is the most important, and there's no better way to do that than to hire an expert that is an expert in that they can keep your business running and they can keep your systems up to minimize, hospice, something goes down, it's it costs lives. So
right,
yeah,
that's
hire
very
an
important.
expert. Yeah. Kevin, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time and chatting with us today. Yeah, I've learned a lot.
Well, thank you. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
And like I said, we'll have all his links down below. You can reach out to Kevin from Maximizing E-commerce if you want to know more. Just real quick, I know you're rolling out some courses, right? Do you want to tell everybody about that real quick? Just a quick shameless plug.
Sure. So if you're currently selling on Amazon and you're watching this or listening, and you would like to learn how to grow an international channel, Amazon outside of the US, and we didn't really touch on this, but Amazon outside of the US has become a 6-figure channel for my business. And so I actually have a totally free resource where I put together training. So depending on when someone's listening to this, they can either sign up for a future training, or they can get access to a replay if they go to maximizingecommerce.com/expand. And if you go to maximizingecommerce.com/expand, you can sign up for, again, this is free training on the steps you would take to create an international empire, so to speak, in your business. And again, it's free.
Man, again, thank you. It's always exciting to meet people that broke away from the 9-to-5. I mean, we're some of those people too, and it's always awesome to find stories of people that are really doing what they love and what they're passionate about, and able to make a living doing it on their own. So thank you so much for sharing your story. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And man, we'll have you on again. Maybe, hopefully in the future, we can have you on and we'll talk how you have dominated the world on Amazon. Have a great day.
You too.